Hey guys, welcome back. Happy June. I'm so glad y'all are here with me today. I once again cannot believe it's June. We're already 5 months through the year. That is crazy to think about. I hope y'all are having a great first half to your year or had a first great half to your year. I hope you've had a really great year of reading so far. And today we are going to be diving into all of the books I read in May. Forewarning, in May, I kind of slipped into a reading slump. So I had a really hard time getting through books or looking forward to any books. And yeah, it was just kind of a disappointing month for me. But it happens, and I think June is going to be a lot more fun. I have so many books to read and so little time, and I think that's why I kind of slipped into a books or a reading slump this month. Was I was super busy in my personal life, and I just wasn't connecting to any characters really. I wasn't really looking forward to reading, and yeah, it was just kind of a slow month. But it's going to be a short and sweet video. Thank you all for tuning in. Make sure you hit the like and subscribe button and check out my other videos and turn on the notification bell so you know when I post so you can check in with me. First off, in May, I actually primarily read this book in April. I finished reading it on May 1st, and that is 20 Years Later by Charlie Dunlea. This one I buddy read with Micah. We read it on audiobook, and we really, really enjoyed it. It was 3.5 stars for I think both of us. It Nothing really stands out in my memory. I feel like I read it so long ago, but like I said, this month I didn't feel super connected to any of the characters. I will say with this one, this is like Charlie Donlee's most popular read that I have seen, at least on social media. And I didn't connect with it that much, or compared to his other books. I still feel like Summit Lake is my favorite. I will say that this one is over Those Empty Eyes, probably, but I do think it falls under Don't Believe It. So I would say it's like number 2 out of all the books I read from him so far. I still liked it. I would recommend the audiobook. I feel like his books are really, really, really great on audiobook. The writing is very cut and dry and straight to the point, so it doesn't leave you confused in audiobooks. Like, I know I read a lot of audiobooks, and the ones that have a lot going on or a lot of POVs, I get lost in a lot of times. So Charlie Dunlea is somebody who I know I can pick up on audiobook if I'm like in the car on a trip or heading to work or something like that. He's an easy audiobook author to listen to. 3.5 stars. It was good. Like I said, it's not sticking out in my memory. So that's how I know that it wasn't anything more than a 3 to 3.5 stars. Next, I picked up Know My Name by Chanel Miller. This is a memoir about a woman who went through a really traumatic experience. Her case kind of went viral in the news when it happened. It is a case involving SA. So definitely check trigger warnings before you go into this book. It does deal with very heavy topics, but it's a really important read. I remember reading about this story. If y'all have heard of this story, you've heard of it because of the perpetrator in the story, Brock Turner. This is Chanel Miller, the victim story. She went by a anonymous name after the tragedy happened until she was identified when she went and testified at the trial as the victim. And this is her story post everything, and getting her name back and reclaiming her name so that everyone knows who she is and that she's proud of who she is, and that Brock didn't change her life and how she moved forward in her story. He didn't get to dictate that. I found it really, really powerful. I knew nothing about her before that book, and there's two sides to every story, and she deserved to have a name and to have a voice in all of it. And so I would say it is a must read for anybody and everybody. And yeah, go look into her story and learn who she is from her perspective and her life and her story. The next book I picked up, I have it in physical copy, but I did read the EARC. I got sent it from the author and the publisher. Thank you so much. It really, like, it was one of those ARCs that I got sent and I couldn't believe it. This is one of my auto-buy authors. I love him, and that is Steve Kavanaugh's 50/50. I will also put the new cover coming out right here. So this book has already come out. This is the UK edition. They've been out for a while. It's like an eight-part series so far. This is part of the Eddie Flynn series. He is reprinting this series, so I got sent 50/50 and The Devil's Advocate. So those were the two I've been sent in ARC form. I picked this one up. It's coming out in the next week, the first week of June. This one, I mean, I'm never going to not like an Eddie Flynn novel. I think that's what it boils down to, is I love Steve Kavanaugh's writing. It's very similar to Harlan Coben. And so I feel like those authors are just auto-buy authors for me. I love the legal thriller aspect and how well they do them. They're so complex. He has so many different characters, and they're all so well thought out, and they have such an important part in each individual story. I will say, I found out after getting sent the ARCs that these are interconnected standalones. So I read them kind of out of order when I got sent the ARC. 50/50 is about twin sisters who are both put on trial for their dad's unaliving. And they are both blaming each other. And Eddie Flynn is the lawyer for one of them, and then there's another lawyer on the other side, and you're following all these different POVs as they're going through the trial, post-trial. But the part that's really interesting and that really added to the story was the POV of she, and you're following the alleged murderer, but you don't know who they are. And they let out little secrets, and you think they connect back to one of the girls, and then you're like, oh man, like, it also connects to the other girl. So he just ropes you along thinking that both of them could be the perpetrator. And I swear my guess changed every other chapter. I thought it was one of the girls, and then 2 chapters later, I thought it was another girl, and I was set on that, and then it changed again. And I still wasn't right at the end. So it was really great. I gave it, I believe, a 4-star. I would leave it there. It's not a 5-star read. I couldn't tell you like the characters' names or anything off the top of my head, but there were some really great cameos and character progression from the first few books into this one. And I just love Eddie Flynn. I love what Steve Kavanaugh has done with that world and done with that character. I love when thriller authors can make these super long series about one character and you just are so connected to them the entire time. Because I feel like that can happen in romance books with like the found family aspect and friend groups and the actual family and all of the different romantic connections and interests. And in thrillers, that's a little bit harder to keep continuously through a long part series. But Steve Kavanaugh and Harlan Coben have done it really well. Harlan writes Myron Bolitar and Steve Kavanaugh writes Eddie Flynn. So that was number 3. Number 4 for the month is an ARC that I got sent, The Red Knot by Monique Asher. This one was so good. Now, it's not going to be for everybody, so definitely look into it before you pick it up. It's a cult horror, kind of gothic. It's very, very dark and ominous, very atmospheric. Like you feel like you're living in it with them. It's set in rural Alaska, and it's about a town who's been haunted by a cult in their past, who allegedly is no longer in action. Like they're not a working cult anymore. But as you get through the book, weird things start happening, and their involvement becomes more pronounced in the community, even though it's like 20 years after the cult like dissipated. And you're following Audra. She is the lead investigator because a bunch of girls are going missing, and nobody can understand it because they're in this tiny rural Alaskan town where everybody knows everybody. I'm sure some of you live in a town like that or have in the past. And it's very hard to understand how somebody that you definitely know is hurting the people around you and you. And so the head investigator, Audra, you're also following like her daughter and her best friend and her detective partner. So very dark. It was really hard to read in some parts. It's very graphic, but I do feel like that it definitely was a horror novel or could be considered horror. If you're into books, especially thriller books that are related to cults, like An Honest Lie by Taryn Fisher or The Last Session by Julia Bartz, this is one for you. It also is a longer horror. I feel like with horror books, typically they're pretty short, like 250 or under. And this one is over 350 pages. I believe it's 400 on the dot. So if you love horror books and you're looking for a longer one, this is definitely one that's a little more drawn out. I will say that that is kind of what knocked the rating down to a 4 for me, was just the overall pacing of the book. I feel like some of the parts could have been cut out or at least been condensed and maybe have been shorter or less detailed, and it wouldn't have taken anything away from the reading experience. But overall, the characters really did it for me. That's why I gave it a 4 star. And also just the atmospheric writing, where I really felt like I was in rural Alaska and I live in South Texas. And so that really got me. Also, I think this is this author's debut novel. And so that was also something that was shocking to me. Thank you to the publisher, Monique Asher and NetGalley, for sending me an early copy of this book. I really, really appreciate it, and I really enjoy it, and I recommend it to all of you. The next one I picked up Out on a Limb by Hannah Bonham Young. So freaking cute. I still haven't even written my full review on Goodreads because I can't seem to formulate how I feel about this book. It definitely lived up to the expectations. This one seems to be very overhyped on Book Talk and BookTube and all the different social media sites, but I will say it lived up to the expectations for me. Win and Bo are adorable. I loved their clear communication, their lack of expectations on each other. They were in a bad situation, or not even a bad situation, a hard situation, a difficult situation that neither of them had navigated before. And they gave each other grace and understanding, which I feel like is really rare in romance books. This was a very relatable, real world example of romance in romance novels and fiction novels. I feel like romance sometimes, or a lot of times, gets blown out of like what really happens in real life. And Hannah Bonham Young just wrote very relatably. Also, I love strong, funny, unapologetic female characters, and Win was that. She was herself. She understood her faults. She worked to get better where she needed to be a better person for Bo and the friends around her. I loved her and her best friend, the relationship they had, and how they knew each other from birth because of their moms. And the messiness of her and her own mom's relationship, but how her friend really picked up the slack, and her friend's mom really picked up the slack and gave her all the support she needed. And then Bo came in and gave her all that other support that she didn't even know she needed. And yeah, it was just really cute. It was a very sweet, it's not super duper spicy. It is definitely more wholesome. And I'm really, really excited to read other books by Hannah Bonham Young. If you'll have a recommendation on which one I should pick up next after that one, let me know. I have all of them, so let me know which one I should pick up next. And last, but certainly not least, since we only read 5 books this month, She's Not Sorry by Mary Kubica. I love Mary Kubica. I can always count on her books to keep me on my toes, get me out of a reading slump, or at least just give me something that I know I'm going to enjoy. And this one was no different. I will say it didn't read like what I thought it was going to read like, if that makes any sense. Like, this was supposed to be about an ICU nurse who meets a really odd patient who has a creepy background. And I truly thought that meant that it was going to take place primarily in the hospital and in that setting. And we were really going to get to know the character and everything, or the patient and everything. And I do not feel like that at all. I don't know if y'all have read that, if y'all feel differently, but I feel like I was more following her life out of the ICU and away from the patient than them together and us really learning like the patient and her backstory and her back her her past life and what led her there. I know how it all ties up together and I get that. It just wasn't what I was expecting. So I gave it a 3.5 star. I will say this was Mary Kubica's most beautifully written book. And I don't know if that makes sense with the 3.5 star rating, but I feel like it read like a poem in some parts. And that was really, really cool for me to see in a thrilling fiction novel is it was just written so lyrically for a thriller. And there were parts that I highlighted that I was like, wow, like that literally sounds like a poem. Like it rhymes and I don't know, it almost felt like a song in some parts. And Mary Kubica's writing always hits that for me of that easygoing, easy to digest, very relatable writing. It's very dry and short. And I know that bothers some people, like if the sentences are very short and it's very concise. But the best way I can describe it, it is the most concise reading while still being the most descriptive and atmospheric reading that or writing that you will ever read. It is such a paradox. I truly believe like she writes the most beautiful thrillers in the most concise yet descriptive way. And I would highly recommend it to any reader if you are starting out on your thriller journey or you're trying to break out of a different your normal genre to a different genre. Try Mary Kubica to get you into thrillers. It's really hard to dislike her writing style, in my opinion, and I think that she would just work for anybody. So, with that being said, that wraps up May. It was a short reading month for me. We read 5 books, and it was a good month. I mean, it was slow. It was definitely not what I'm used to. It was kind of all over the place. I read a lot of different genres, but I had a lot of fun. I hope y'all had a great May, and I hope y'all had fun sitting down with me for a couple of minutes and talking about books with me today. Make sure you hit that like and subscribe button, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.